This is the top 70 Flutter widget. Let's start right now. The MaterialBanner widget. And this is what we will be able to create. You have a little pop-up from the top that you can dismiss at any time. To create this, we'll start with a center widget, an elevated button with the text open. The onPress function will have the scaffold messenger.ofContext.showMaterialBanner. Inside we use the MaterialBanner widget. You can create a padding. The content will be just the text subscribe, so you can see it's this information. The leading will be an icon notification. The elevation will be 5, the background color white 12. And the actions will have a text button with the onPress function that will trigger the scaffold messenger.ofContext.hide the current material banner. The child will be dismiss. And just like this, you have created a material banner with your Flutter app. The PreferredSize widget. This can be used to create your own app bar widget. So the first thing you need is to create the PreferredSize widget inside the app bar of the scaffold. The argument PreferredSize will be a size from height, and we will use 80. The child will be a container with the height 120. The decoration will be a box decoration. Because we want to have a gradient, we will use the linear gradient widget. The colors of the gradient will be color red and orange. Next, we need to create a child, which we will use the safe area. The child will be a center, and the child of the center will be a list tile widget. We have the title Flutter map and the trailing icon search. And just like this, you have created your own app bar widget. The bottom sheet. In a center widget, we will create an elevated button. This one will have a text model bottom sheet. And when we press on it, this will trigger the show model bottom sheet. You will need the context inside and a builder. The builder will have also the context, and this will return a sized box by example, but it can be any widget. We will set the height at 400. Inside we will have a center widget with a child elevated button. This one will have the text close, and when we press on it, this will trigger the navigator.pop context. In other words, this one will be used to close the bottom sheet. And when you press on the model bottom sheet, you will see that the sheet is coming from the bottom inside your app, and you can also close it. And the animation is all done for you. The LongPressDraggable widget. This one can be used to select an item and move the location of the item. So let me show you how it works. First, we create a variable offset, which will be the location of the image when we start. Then inside a center widget, we use a layout builder. This one have the context and the constraints. We will need this to know where is the location of the widget. Inside we will use a stack widget, which will have children. The first one is the positioned. So we will position the widget from the left with the offset.x-axis. We will do the same thing with the top with the offset.dy. Inside we have the child, which will be the LongPressDraggable. First argument will be the feedback. It will be an image network, but with a color orange and a blend mode color burn. The feedback is the image we can see on the screen when we drag the widget. After this, you have the child widget, which will be also an image, but this one is the original image. The argument on drag end will have the details, and inside you will set state and create an adjustment of the image location. After you will set your offset variable using the adjustment we just created. And just like this, you have created a LongPressDraggable widget, which can be used to move anything inside your app. The InteractiveViewer widget. You can use this to zoom inside your application. You can see this is a widget inside a scaffold, which I can zoom and dezoom. And this is because of the InteractiveViewer. Let me show you how to create this. First, we will start with a scaffold widget. The background color will be orange accent. The body will be the InteractiveViewer. Inside, we will set the boundary margin to edgeInsets.all double infinity. The child will be another scaffold with a navbar. And now you can see that I can move the scaffold pretty much everywhere, and I can also zoom and dezoom everywhere inside the scaffold. But keep in mind that you can use this for any widget. The ReorderableListView. On the screen we have a list, but we can reorder every item inside this one. First, we will need to create a list of items. This one will be a list.generate of 30 items. Next, we use the ReorderableListView widget. Inside we have the children, which will be a list.generate also. The items.length will be the number of items inside the list. And then each item will be a list style. Make sure that you put the key, which will be in this example, a key with the index inside. The tile color will depend if the item is odd or not. The title will be the item and the index of the item. The trailing will be the drag handle sharp icon. And after you need to create the onReorder, this one will give you the old index and the new index. With this, you can create a logic. You can say set state. If the old index is smaller than the new index, then you will say that the new index is -1. You can then create a final item is equal to item.remove at old index, and then insert the item at the new index location. This is just all the logic to make sure that when you move an item, it go to another place. And this was how to use the ReorderableListView with Flutter. The CheckboxListTile. First thing we need is a boolean isChecked set as false. In the center widget, we will have the CheckboxListTile. You will need to have a title. This one will be a text CheckboxListTile. The value will be the isChecked from the boolean that we have created earlier. You will need the unchanged argument, and this will give you the new value of the checkbox. Inside you will say set state, and the isChecked will now be equal to the new value. You can change the active color. I will put orange accent. The check color will be white. And if you press on the button, you will see it's white and with the orange accent background. You have also the argument tile color, which will be black 12. A subtitle text, this is a subtitle. And if you want, you can switch the location of the checkbox by using the control affinity, listTile control affinity.leading. The argument TrueStateTrue will allow you to have the checked, null, or unchecked. This was the CheckboxListTile. The CircleAvatar widget. In a center, we will create the CircleAvatar. Inside, we will have the background color, which we will say orange accent. You can have the radius 55 if you want to change the size. And I will add a background image, which is an asset image from my assets. And this will create a circle around your image. If you need, you can also have a child inside the CircleAvatar. This will be a text saying hi. And this is how to use the CircleAvatar with Flutter. The CupertinoContextMenu. And this is what we will create, a button that will trigger two different actions. Inside the center widget, we will create a sized box first with the width and the height 100. Inside we have the child CupertinoContextMenu. This one will take a child. In this case, it will be the image network, and it's the YouTube image. The actions will be a list of CupertinoContextMenu action. The child will be a text action 1, and the onPress will have the navigator.popContext. We will do the same thing with another CupertinoContextMenu action. The child will be a text action 2, and the onPress will be a navigator.pop. And with this, you have created an image button that when you press on it, you have two different options, the action 1 or the action 2. And this was the CupertinoContextMenu. The table widget. This is what it looked like, and I will show you how to create this right now. First, we use a center and a padding widget. Inside, we use the table widget. The border will be table border.all with the color white 30. The default vertical alignment will be in the middle. The children will start with the table row. The decoration will be a box decoration with the color red accent. This will be the color of the first table row. Inside this one, we have multiple children. We will use the table cell. In the child, we use a padding widget with the child text title 1. This is the first cell you can see on the screen. We will also add two other table cells, and I will save the application. Now what I will do is after the table row, I will create a list of multiple table rows. By doing list.generate with 20 items, each of them will be a table row. The children will be 3 table cells with the text cell 1, 2, and 3. And now you have access to a table in your app. If you want to make sure that this list is scrollable, you can wrap everything with the single child scroll view. And now you will have a scrollable table inside your app. The AlertDialog widget. Inside the center of our application, we will have an elevated button. This one will have a text show alert dialog. And when we press on it, we will show a dialog. This will take the context and a builder. The builder will return the widget AlertDialog. Inside you can have the actions, which in this example we will use a text button with the onPressNavigator.ofContext.pop and a child saying close. You can also have a title inside the AlertDialog. We will say Flutter Map. The content padding will be a edge and sets.all20. And the content will be a text, this is the AlertDialog. With all this, you have generate this button and you have this pop-up when you click on it. This is the title, this is the content, and this is the actions. The animated container. Let's start this one by adding a boolean selected set as false. The gesture detector will have the untap and the child center. The untap will set state and reverse the value of the selected. Again, the selected is the boolean that we have set at the beginning. In the center, we will have a child animated container. For the width, if the selected is true, it will be 200. Otherwise, it will be 100. The height will have the same logic. If it's selected, then it will be 100. Otherwise, it will be 200. The color of the animated container will be blue-gray if the selected is true. Otherwise, the color will be white. Now for the alignment, we will say if the selected is true, then the alignment will be center. Otherwise, the alignment will be top center. The duration of this animated container will be 2 seconds. We can also have a curve, which will be fast out, slow in. The child of the animated container will be a Flutter logo with the size 75. And you can see that when I press on the gesture detector, all the characteristics of the animated container will be animated. The width, the height, the color, and the alignment of the child. This widget is very simple to implement. The card widget. Inside the center of the app, the child will be the card widget. You can change the elevation of the card and the color if you need. The child will be a padding. The padding will be all in set 15. And the child will be a column with the main axis size minimum. The list of children will be the sized box height 8, a text, this is a Flutter card, and a simple text button with the text pressed. And the orange thing is what we call the card. It's like the container widget, but you have an elevation and rounded corners. The DatePicker with Flutter. And you will see that when you click on this button, you have access to a calendar and you can select any date to have it on the screen right after. And I will show you how to create this right now. The first thing you will need is the date time selected date. This one is a datetime.now, and inside the center widget and a column, we will have the list of widgets. The first one will be a text widget. Inside we will have the selected date.year, .month, and .day. Right under, we will create an elevated button. The child will be a text choose date, and the onPress function will be async. Inside we have the final datetime nullable called datetime. This one will await the show date picker. Inside this one we need the context, the initial date, which is the selected date we created. The first date, I will say datetime.2000. The last date, I will say datetime.3000. And right after you will say if the datetime is not null, then we will set state and say that the selected date is equal to the new date time. And just like this, you have created a calendar with your Flutter app and you can select any date. The TimePicker with Flutter. And I will show you how to create something like this. You will be able to select any current time and this will be displayed on the screen. To create something like this, you will need to start with a time of day, which we will call selected time. This one will be a time of day.now. And inside the code, we will have a center, a column, and inside the children of the column, we will start with a text widget. This one will display the selected time.hours and the selected time.minutes. And this is what you see on the screen right now. Under this one, we will have the elevated button. The child will be a text choose time. And when we press on it, this will be an async function. We will have the final time of day, which is nullable, is equal to await show time picker. Inside this one, you will need the context, the initial time, which is the selected time we have created. You can also create the initial entry mode. For this example, I will use TimePicker entry mode dial. And after this, you will say if the time of the day is not null, then we will set state and say that the selected time is equal to the time of the day that we have received from the show time picker. And just like this, you have created a time picker with your Flutter app. The date range picker with Flutter. This will allow you to select a range of date in your Flutter app. I will save and you will see that by example, we have 17 days between those two dates. So let's code this right now. First thing, we will need to create a date time range, and this one will need to have the start, which will be datetime.now, and the end, datetime.now also. With this one, we can go inside the center and the column widget and create a text widget that uses the text selectedDate.duration.inDays. This will allow us to know how many days there is between those two dates. And if I restart the application, you can see that we have 0 days because the end and the start is the same time. Under the text widget, we will create an elevated button. This one will have the child text choose dates. The onPress function will be async, and inside we have the date time range is equal to await show date range picker. Inside we have the context, the first date which will be 2000, the last date which is 3000, and after we need to say if the date time range is not null, then we set state and the selected date is equal to the new date time range. With this you have a way to select a range of date inside your Flutter app. The Dismissible widget. Let's say you have a list of items and you want to remove items inside the list. This is the Dismissible widget. And I will show you how to use it right now. First thing first, we will need to create a list of int, which we call items. To generate this one, we will say list.generate 100 items, and each item will give us an index that we will store inside the list. In other words, this is a list of 100 numbers. In the return, we will say listView.builder because we want to create this list. Then you will need to say item counts, items.length. The padding will be vertical 16, and the item builder will return the Dismissible widget. You can design the background of the Dismissible widget. In this example, I will just use a red container. Inside we have the icon delete. And you can see that when I scroll, I have the icon delete with the red color behind. This is the background. Next, we need to have the key. And for this one, I will use the value key int. And inside I will put the index of the item. So the key will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. This will be important because we want to keep track of items that we delete. After we have the onDemist widget. This will give you a demist direction, so you can decide which action will be triggered if the user go from the left or from the right. But for this example, I will just set state and remove the item from the current index. The child of the dismissible will be a list style, the title will be a text with the current item. And with this code, you have created a list of dismissible items. The DraggableScrollable widget. As the name said, you will have a draggable list of scrollable items. For this one, you will need a DraggableScrollable sheet. Inside you will have the builder, which have the build context and the scroll controller. The return will be a container with the color orange. The child will be a simple listView.builder. Inside we will put the scroll controller that we receive from the DraggableScrollable sheet. The item count will be 25. The item builder will have the context and the index, which will return a list style of each items. And just like this, you have created a draggable and scrollable sheet. The DragTarget widget. And this is how it will look. You will be able to take a draggable widget and put it inside the DragTarget widget. To create something like this, we need to start with a variable color, which will be red. In a sized box with double infinity, we will have a column, and in the column, we will have a draggable widget. This one will have the data color orange accent, and the child will be a container with 100, 100 with the color orange. We need also to create a undraggable canceled and also a feedback. This one will be also a container with the color orange accent with opacity 0.5. And this one is the widget when we drag over the screen. Now that we have a draggable widget, we can create the DragTarget. Inside, you will need to have the onAccept argument. This will be the data that you receive from the draggable widget. And inside this function, we will call the color is now equal to the color. We need also to create a builder. For this one, we will have the build context, the list accepted, and the list reject. We will return a container. This one will have a width 200 by the height 200. The color will be, if the accepted list is empty, then it will be the cut color, otherwise it will be the color gray shade 200. The child will be a center widget with the text DraggHeader. And you can see that the DraggTarget is currently the cut color, and as soon as we take the Draggable widget and put it over the DraggTarget, it is the gray color shade 200. And as soon as we release the widget, the color is now cut colors. This was the DraggTarget widget. The Draggable widget. It's a widget that you can take and drag anywhere on the screen. For this example, we will create a cut color red, and inside a sized box, we will create a column with multiple widgets. We will use a DraggTarget widget, so we will be able to take the draggable and put it inside. This one have the argument unaccepted, have a builder, and return a container 200 by 200 with the text DraggHeader inside. For the draggable widget, we will put it over the DraggTarget, and you will have the data argument. This one can be any object, but for this example, we will use the color orange accent. This is the information that will be used later in the DraggTarget widget. We need also to create a child. This will be a container 100 by 100, color orange accent, and the text box. You can see it's this widget. You can add also a undraggable canceled. This will be triggered when you take the widget and don't complete the action. The feedback will be a container with the width and height of 150. The color will be orange accent with opacity 0.5. The child is a center widget with the text box and 3 dots. This is the widget that you are currently dragging. You will also need to create a style for the text. I will use a color white and the font size 18. And just like this, you have created a draggable widget that you can put inside the DraggTarget widget. The AnimatedCrossFade widget. We start by creating a boolean set as true. Inside the column, we will have multiple children. The first one will be a sized box with a height of 100. Under, we will have a text button. This one will have the onPress that set state the boolean to the invert of the boolean. And the child of the text button will be a text saying switch. This will be used to trigger the AnimatedCrossFade widget. The third widget inside the column will be the AnimatedCrossFade. The first thing we need to add is the first child, which will be an image. The second child will be another different image. And then you can use the crossfade state. If the boolean is true, then we will say crossfade state.show first. This will show the first child. Otherwise, crossfade state.show second. This one will show the second child. The duration of this animation will be 1 second. With all this, when you press on the switch button, this will animate a fade transition between the two widgets. Our two widget is only 2 images, but you can do this with any widget. The drawer widget. You can click on this button and this will open what we call a drawer, which you have 2 elements inside. To create something like this with Flutter, you will need inside your scaffold to use the argument drawer. Inside the widget, you will have a child. We will use a list view and we will have 2 list style inside. Just like this, you will have a button to open a drawer. But how can you create a button in the middle of the screen to open this drawer? For this, we will create in the body a center widget with the elevated button. Then we will wrap the elevated button with a builder widget. And inside the onPress, we will have the scaffold.ofContext.open drawer. And just like this, you can open the drawer from a button. If you want, you can change the location of the drawer by using instead the end drawer. And now you will see it will open on the right side. And if you want the button to work, you will need to use the open end drawer. Just like this, you have created a drawer within your Flutter application. The DrawerHeader widget. First, we will need to create inside the scaffold a drawer. This one will have a list view and the children will be 2 list style. You can see that this will create a drawer on the screen. But you can add the DrawerHeader inside this one. You can add a decoration. I will use the color blue and then a child. The text is DrawerHeader. And you can see that now we have a DrawerHeader. The PopupMenuButton. On the screen, we have a list style, and when we press on the icon, we have a pop-up menu. And you can select the second item to change the list style. To create something like this, we will start with 3 variables: the title, the item 1, and the item 2. The title is what you can see on the list tile. Next, inside the list tile, we will create the title, which will use the text title. The trailing will be the pop-up menu button. Inside, you will use the item builder with the context, and this will return you a list. The first one will be a pop-up menu item. The child will be the text item 1, which is first item, and the value will be also item 1. You will create another pop-up menu item. The child will be a text item 2, and the value also. The argument onSelect will return you the new value select, and you will be able to set state the application and set the title to the new value. And with this, you have created a pop-up menu button inside your Flutter app. The AnimatedDefaultTextStyle widget. We start by creating a boolean called first. This one will be set as true. We have also a double font size, which will be 60, and a color that will be blue. Inside a column, we will have multiple children. The first one will be a sized box with the height 120. The child will be an animated default text style. This one will take a duration, which will be 300 milliseconds. The style will be a text style. The font size will be the font size variable. The color will be the color variable. And the font weight will be bold. This animated default text style will have a child, which will be a text saying Flutter. To trigger the animation, we will create the text button widget in the column. The onPress will be used to set state. Inside we have the font size. If the variable boolean first is true, it will be 90, otherwise it will be 60. The color will be the same logic. If first is true, then the color will be blue, otherwise red. And then we will reverse the value of the first boolean. The child of the text button will be a simple text switch. And now every time that you press on the switch, this will trigger the animated default text style. And you can see that the size of the text is animated, the color also. The aspect ratio widget. First, we will start with a container with the color orange accent. The alignment will be center, the width will be infinite, and the height will be 150. This is what we have. Inside the child of the container, we will have our aspect ratio. The aspect ratio argument will be 16:9. This is the same as television and computer ratio. Inside we will have the child container, the color will be blue-gray, and this is what we have. You can see that this is the size of a computer. Now let's change the height for 300, and you can see that you still have the aspect ratio 16:9. And this is only possible by using the aspect ratio widget, the AutoComplete. First, we create a list of string, which we call the list items. This will just be a list of multiple fruits, apple, banana, melon. Inside the build, we will return the AutoComplete, and inside we can say that this will be strings. The option builder will have inside the text editing value. This is what we enter inside the text. This is the input of the user. If the text editing value.text is equal to nothing, then we will return an empty list of iterable string. Otherwise, we will return the list of items under certain condition. For each item, this is what we will do. We will return the item if it contains the text editing value.text, which is the input of the user, dot to lowercase. In other words, if the user have written A, this will return the apple and the banana. You can also have an unselected. This means when the user click on a certain item. For now, we will just print the item was selected. And you can see that when I go inside the app and I write A, I will have the suggestion for apple because we have the A, and banana because we have an A. If I write P, this will only suggest me apple. And this was how to use the autocomplete. The error widget. When I click on this button, this will throw the red screen error. But what you can do is use instead the ErrorWidget.builder just after the main. This will give you the Flutter error details, and inside I will return a simple container. The alignment will be centered, the child will be a text widget with the error message. I will also create a custom style with the color orange, and the text align.centered. Now when I click on throw the error, this is what I will see on the screen. But if you want to see the red screen only when you use the debug mode, then you can create a boolean in debug is equal to false. You can use the assert function, which will be triggered only when you are in debug mode. And then you set the in debug to true. After you create a if condition, if it's in debug, then return the error widget detail exception. In this way, because I run the application in debug mode right now, if I click on throw error, this will still put the red screen. But in production, you will have the custom message error. The expanded widget. And this is how it will look if you have 3 widgets like this with different flex value. For this one inside the column widget, we will create the expanded widget. The flex will be 2 and the child will be a container blue. Under we create another expanded with the flex 1 and the color orange. The last one will have a flex 3 and have the color red. And you can see that even if the container have a certain height value, the expanded widget will take all the remaining place. And you can use the flex value to know which expanded will take more place than the others. In this case, this expanded widget will take 3 times the space of this expanded widget. The flexible widget. In this example, we will create 3 flexible widgets inside a column. And you can see that the flexible widget is doing absolutely nothing if the inner widget have a certain height. But now if we remove every height of each container, you will see that the flexible will be used. And we define how many space each flexible take by using the flex argument. 5 is bigger than 3, so the flexible 5 will be bigger than this one. And if you want, you can convert a flexible widget into an expanded widget. First, let's re-add every height of each of them. Next, I will add the argument fit, flex fit, for each flexible widget. And now you will see this is acting as an expanded widget. The expanded widget will always take as much place as possible, even if the inner widget have a certain height. And now I will show you visually what is the difference between the expanded and the flexible. I've just replaced everything with 3 different rows. The first one have an expanded and a flexible. And you can see how the application is displaying both of them. If you have 2 expanded, this is how it will look. And if you have 2 flexible, this is how it will look. I hope this example helped you to understand what is the difference between the expanded and the flexible widget. FloatingActionButton widget. In this one, I will show you how to create a button like this. But did you know that this button can be anywhere inside your application? And to build something like this, you will need to go inside your scaffold widget and create a floating action button inside the floating action button argument. You have the onPress function. For this example, we will have an empty function. The background color is the color of the button. We will use the orange accent. The child is the icon.add. And just like this, you have created a floating action button. But if you want, you can change the floating action button location by using the floating action button location.centerDocked. Now it will be in the center. But you can use many other locations like the center float, center top, or end docked. At this point, it all depends on your preferences. This was how to create a floating action button with Flutter. The form widget. This widget will allow you to create a form within your Flutter app and validate everything with only one button. And to create something like this, we will need to start by creating a global key, which we will call the form key. Then inside a padding widget, we will create a form. The key will be the form key we just created. And inside the child, we will create a column widget. This one will have children, and the first one will be a TextFormField widget. Inside you can use the validator argument. It will return you the value, which is all the information entered inside the text field. And then you can create conditions. By example, if the value is null and empty, then we will return enter something. Otherwise, we will return null. We will create another text form field just like this one. And right under, we will create the elevated button. When we press on it, if the form key.currentState.validate is true, then we will trigger the scaffold messenger show snack bar. In other words, this will trigger the validator of every text form field inside the form. And if the conditions are true, then it will trigger the snack bar. The child of the elevated button is a text validate. And now you can see that if we have text inside both text field and we click the validate button, we will see the snack bar. And otherwise, it will show us the error message. And this is how to use the form widget with Flutter. the TextFormField widget. This is the application you will have at the end. We will start by creating a variable titles, which is a list of string. Then inside a single child scroll view, we will create the form widget. We will make sure that the auto-validate mode is always. And then every time we change something inside the form, this will set state and trigger the form.of primaryFocus.context.save. You will see later why we use this. Next, inside the child of the form, we will create a column widget. The children will be a list.generate. We will create 3 items, and each of them will have a padding and a child column. Inside this one, we will create TextFormField widget, which inside will use the onSaved. This is a function that will be triggered every time we save the form. And inside we will receive the value and say if the value is not null, then the title of the current index will be equal to this value. This is why we can see the text right under at the same time as the user is writing information. After we will create a sized box, and secondly, we will create a card widget. This one will have a padding, and the child will be a text title of the current index. And so now, every time you start to write something, this will trigger the onChange function of the form widget, which will set state and trigger the save. Once the save is triggered, this will trigger the onSaved from the TextFormField, which at the same time will change the value written inside the card widget. And this was the TextFormField widget, the animated icon. The first thing we will do is add the WidthTicker provider state mixin right after the extend state. I will tell you why we need this later. Next, we need to create a boolean isPlay that we will set as false when we start, and a late animation controller, which we call controller. With this, we can create the init state, and inside we will say that the controller is equal to an animation controller. The duration will be 1 second, and then we use the vsync this. And we need the WidthTicker provider because otherwise the vsync this will not work. I will put back the WidthTicker provider, and then we will work on the dispose method. Inside this one, we will just need to dispose the controller when we don't use it anymore. Now it's time to work on the UI. In the center widget, we will use a gesture detector. The argument onTap will trigger a if-else condition. If the isPlay is equal to false, then we will say that the controller.forward, and we will set the isPlay as true. Otherwise, we will say the controller.reverse, and the isPlay will be equal to false. Forward means that we will have the next icon, and reverse means that we will have the previous icon. The child of the gesture detector will be the animated icon. Inside we have the icon AnimatedIcon.playPause. This is the first icon, and this is the second one. The progress will be a controller. This is an animated controller. And we will set the size at 100. If you restart the application, you will have a play pause button that is animated. This is called the animated icon. The ChoiceChip widget. The first thing we need is to create a boolean isSelected set as false. In the center widget, we will have a ChoiceChip widget. This one will have a label text ChoiceChip. The selected will be the isSelected boolean we have created. The selected color will be a color orange accent. The unselected will give us a new state, which is a new boolean, and say that isSelected is now equal to the new boolean. Like this, you have created a ChoiceChip that can change color when you click on it. The FadeInImage widget. When your image will load inside your Flutter app, this will display a placeholder before your image is loaded from the internet. You can see that we have a placeholder until the image is loaded. And to create something like this, it's pretty simple with Flutter. We will start with a center widget. We will create a child FadeInImage. This one will be .assetAndNetwork because the placeholder image is from the asset library and the final image is coming from a network. The argument placeholder is from the asset library.icon.oceangpg. This is inside the asset of my Flutter project. Now for the final image, this is coming from the internet, and it's the image that you can see on the screen. So now when we restart the application, you will see that the placeholder image will be displayed before the network image is actually loaded. And this was the FadeInImage widget. the fractionally sized box widget. This widget is exactly the half of the height of the screen and the half of the width of the screen. And this is because we use the fractionally sized box. Let me show you how it works. First, inside the center widget, you will use the fractionally sized box. The width factor will be 0.5 and the height factor will be 0.5. Inside you can put a child container with the color amber accent. And now you have this container. But if you change the height factor to 1, you will see this will take the entire height of the screen. And this was how to use the fractionally sized box with Flutter. The Future Builder widget. When I press on this button, this will wait until we have the data and then it will display everything on the screen. So how do we use the Future Builder? The first thing we will create is a future get data. This will be an async function. Inside you will await a future delay for 1 second. This just means we will wait for 1 second. Then we will return the data super. We will use this throw error later. Now inside the center widget, we will create the future builder. Inside we will have the future, which is the get data. The builder will have the context and the snapshot. Inside you can say if the snapshot.connectionState is equal to connectionState.waiting. So if we are waiting for the data, then it will return the circular progress indicator. And then we create another if-else condition. If the snapshot has an error, then we will return something, and otherwise we will return something else. So if we have an error, we will display a text widget with the snapshot.error.toString. And otherwise we will return a column widget with a text that have the snapshot.data.toString. We will also use an elevated button, and this one will have a set state inside the onPress function. The child will be a text refresh. Okay, so with all this, when we press the refresh button, this will trigger the function getData, will wait for 1 second, and then will return the data super. But what will happen if we throw an error? In this case, it will return the error widget. And this was how to use the Future Builder with your Flutter app. The gesture detector widget. In this example, we have a simple container that we have wrapped with a gesture detector. So every time we click on the container, this will trigger a function. But you can wrap anything with the gesture detector in order to create a button. To make something like this, you will first create an int counter, which will be 0. Inside the center widget, we will use a gesture detector. The onTap function will trigger a set state and will add 1 to the counter. The child will be a container with the height and width 200 and the color orange accent. The child will be a center with the text counter.toString, and we will add a style of font size 50. And this was how to use the gesture detector with Flutter. The grid view widget. At the end of this video, you will be able to create a list just like this one. So first we will use the gridView.builder. Inside we have the grid delegate. For this one, we use the sliver grid delegate with fixed cross-axis count. The cross-axis count will be 2 because we want to have 2 columns. The item builder will be a grid tile widget. And this one is the picture with the header and the footer. The next thing you need is the item count. We will create 10 items inside this list. And with all of this, you have created a grid view widget. But keep in mind that you can also just use the grid view like this. You don't need to have the .builder. And this was how to use the grid view widget inside your Flutter app. The grid tile widget. You can see that we have a widget with a header and a footer. And this is created by the grid tile widget. To make something like this, you will use a sized box inside a center widget. You will create your own height and width. The child will be the grid tile. And inside you can have a header, which will use a simple container with the height 40. The child will be a center widget with the text header, and the color will be black 38. After you can create a child widget. In this example, we will just use an image from network. And this is how it will look. But you can also create a footer widget. For this example, we will use the same height. The child will be a center with the text footer, and the color will be also black 38. And now you can see on your screen, you have created a grid tile widget, the grid tile bar widget. On the screen right now, we use the grid tile widget, but inside we use what we call the grid tile bar. Let me show you right now by creating a center and a sized box widget with height and width. Inside the child, we will have the grid tile. The header will be a grid tile bar. You can change the background color. the leading will be an icon person, the title will be text Flutter map, and the trailing will be an icon menu. For the grid tile to work, we'll need to create a child. This one will just be an image network. And this is what we have on the screen right now. You can also use the grid tile bar inside the footer. For this example, we use the background color and the leading. So if you want to use the grid tile inside your Flutter app, you can use the grid tile bar inside the header and the footer. This was how to use the grid tile bar widget. The animated rotation. The first thing we need is a double called turns, and we will set this one as 0. Next, inside a center column, we will add the widget padding with the edgeAndSets.all 50. The child will be the animated rotation. The turns argument will be the turns that we have declared earlier. The duration will be 1 second, and the child will be a Flutter logo with the size 100. Under the padding in the column, we will have an elevated button. This one will have a child text rotate logo, and the style will be colors.orange_accent. Finally, we have the onPress, and when we click on it, this will trigger the set state and will say that the turns is equal to +1/4. With all this, when you press on the rotate logo button, this will rotate the Flutter logo 1/4, and you can do it multiple times. This is to create an animation for the rotation of any widget. The ErrorWidget. This one can be used to animate the transition between two widgets. In this example, we have an icon which animates the transition inside another page with a different widget. And this is created with the ErrorWidget. Let me show you how it works. First, we'll create a list style. Inside, we will have the trailing hero. The tag will be tag1. Keep this in mind because we will reuse this later. Inside we have the child icon person, and when we press on this, it will trigger the navigator.push. This will bring us to another page, which will use the material page route, and the builder that will return the second page. In other words, this will bring us to another page. The title of this list style will be text click on me. But now it's time to create this second page. We will create the class and return a scaffold widget. Inside we have the app bar second page. The body will be a center with the column. Inside the children of the column, we will have the ErrorWidget. The tag will be the same as the previous one, tag1, and the child will be a container orange accent with the height and the width 100. And just like this, when you press on the list style, this will bring you to the other page and will animate the transition between the two widgets, the icon and the container. The ignore pointer widget. As you can see on the screen, I can click on the click me button, but as soon as I click on this button, I will block the click of the second one. And this is because we use the ignore pointer. To create something like this, we will start by using a boolean ignore set to false. In the center of the app, we use a column widget, and the children will be an elevated button. Inside we have the onPress function that will trigger the set state and change the value of the ignore boolean. If it's false, it will be true. If it's true, it will be false. Next, the child is a text widget, and if the value is true, then it will be blocked. Otherwise, it will be all good. The style of the elevated button will also change. We will use the elevated button.style from. The primary color will be, if it's true, then it will be red, otherwise green. And you can see that every time I press on this button, the color change. But now it's time to use the ignore pointer. The argument ignoring will be ignore, which is our boolean we have created. The child will be an elevated button with the onPress function, and the child text click me. If the value ignore is true, then the button will not be clickable. But if we change the value to false, then the button will be clickable. And this was how to use the ignore pointer with your Flutter app. The indexed stack widget. If I click on different button, this will change the image on the screen. This is because we use the index stack widget. To create something like this, we will start with the int index equals 0. Inside the padding, we will create a column widget, and in the children, we will start with a row. The children inside the row will be first an elevated button with the text 0. It's the first button you can see on the screen. The onPress will set state and set the index to 0. This is the variable we created at the start. We will create two other elevated buttons, one that will set the index to 1 and one that will set the index to 2. In this way, we can change the value of the index variable. It's now time to create the indexed stack widget. The index argument will be the index variable we created. The children will be 3 different images. And now when we click the buttons to change the index, this will automatically switch between these 3 widgets. This was how to use the index stack widget with your Flutter app. The ListView widget. This one is a way to display multiple list tiles inside a scrollable list. I will also show you how to create divider between each list tile. So let's start right now by using the ListView.separated. The item count will be 5. The item builder will have the context and the index, which will return a list tile. Because we use the .separated, you will need to create a separator builder. This one will have the context and the index. You can create everything you need between each widget, but for this example, we will just use the divider widget with the color white. And just like this, you have used the ListView widget. The list tile widget. This is a box where you can display a leading, a title, and a trailing widget. I will show you how to create this right now. Inside the center widget, we will use the list tile. The title will be a text Flutter map. The tile color will be orange accent. You can use an untap function. The leading will be an icon person. And finally, the trailing will be an icon menu. The navigation bar widget. This is what you will be able to create at the end of this video. First thing first, we will add a int current index and also a list, which we will call body, of multiple icons. With this, we can go inside the scaffold widget and create a center widget. The child will be the body.element@ of the current index. This is the variable we created. After this, we will use the bottom navigation bar with the navigation bar widget. This one will use the destinations, and it will require multiple navigation destination. The icon will be home and the label will be home. If you put only one of them, you will have a red screen. So make sure that you have multiple navigation destination. But now the buttons are not clickable. To make this work, you will need to use the selected index, which will be the current index. And then when you trigger the onDestination select, you will be able to set state and say that the current index is now equal to the index you just received with the onDestination select. And now you are able to change pages inside your app with the navigation bar widget. The animated opacity widget. You need to create a double opacity level that we will start by setting up at 1.0. Inside a center and a column widget, we will add the first widget, which is the animated opacity. This one will have the opacity of the opacity level that we have just created. The duration of the animation will be 2 seconds. The child will be a Flutter logo with the size 50. And under this widget, we will have the elevated button. The child is a text saying fade logo. And when we press on this, we will set state and we will say that if the opacity level is currently 0, then it will be 1, and otherwise it will be 0. And with all this, you can animate the opacity of the Flutter logo. You can see that it takes 2 seconds to vanish completely in the screen. The stack widget. On this example, we have 2 images, one over the other. And this is because we use the stack widget. In a center widget, we will create the stack widget. This one will take a list of children. The first widget, which will be under everything, will be the center widget with an image asset ocean. And now we will create another center widget with the image asset blue.jpg. And you can see that the other image will stack over the first one. This was how to use the stack widget. The stepper widget. This will create a step-by-step flow inside your app. To make something like this, we start by creating a variable current step set as 0. In a center widget, we use the stepper widget with the step argument. The first one will be a step. The argument is active is a true or false boolean. And we will define this by saying the current step is equal to 0. If this is true, you will see the information of the current step. Next, you can create a title. It will be step 1. And the content can be anything. We will use a text with information for step 1. But now we will create 2 other steps. This one will be the step number 2 with a different logic, and the step number 3 with also a different logic. And now I will show you how to trigger those buttons. First, you will need to use the onStep tap, which gives you a new index. With this, you can set state and set the current step to the new index. Now you can see that I can press on the other steps, but nothing really happened. This is because we need to set the current step to the variable current step. Now if I click, you will see that the steps are changing. After this, we can use the onStep continue. This will say if the current step is not the last one, then you will move forward and go one step further. We will also use the onStep cancel. And if it's not the first item, then we will set state and go back from one item before. So now you can click continue and cancel to go back. But you can also change the type with the stepper type.horizontal, and this will give you an horizontal stepper widget. The Stream Builder widget. In this example, new data are coming inside the application, and every time we receive a new data, the value will change. We will start by creating a fake Firebase stream. This one will be called the generate stream. The first thing we will do inside is wait for 2 seconds, and then we will receive the value 1. Then we will wait for 1 second and receive the value 2. Later in this example, I will show you what happens if we throw an error. The third one will wait for 1 second and receive the value 3. Now that we have created a fake Firebase stream, we can put inside the center widget the stream builder. The stream will be the generate stream that we just created. The initial data will be 0, and the builder will have the context and the snapshot. We will create a condition. If the snapshot.connectionState is equal waiting, then we will return a circular progress indicator. If the snapshot has an error, then we will display a text error. And otherwise, we will say a text snapshot.data.toString. And now if we refresh the application, you will see that this will load for 2 seconds, display the value 1, 2, and 3. But now let's throw an error right after the value number 2. Now I will refresh the app and you will see 1 and then the error. This is because we have the condition, if we have an error, then display the text error. The switch widget. If you need a button just like this, you can do it with the switch widget. First, we create a variable boolean isSwitched set as false. In the center widget, we create the switch widget. The value will be the boolean isSwitched, and the onChange will have the value, which we will set state and set the isSwitch to the new value. This will give you access to a switch widget. The tab page selector. If you need to show the current page with dots like this at the bottom, you can use the tab page selector widget. First thing first, we will create a list of widgets, and inside we will put 3 different icons. Next, we will need to use the with single ticker provider state mixin. After, we will create a controller and an index set as 0. In the init state, we will set the controller to a tab controller. The length will be the widgets.length. The initial index will be the current index value. You will also need the vsync this, which is accessible because we use the single ticker provider state mixin. Because we use the controller, we also need to dispose this controller. With this, we can go inside a scaffold widget, create a stack widget with the alignment center. Inside the children, we will use the tab bar view. The controller will be the controller we just created. The children will be the widgets, which is a list of icons. Then we need to create a positioned widget. The bottom will be 40. This is just the location for the tab page selector widget. The controller will also be the same controller. The color will be black 38. And then we can create a floating action button, which will use the bottom bar. This one will be used to change pages. So inside the children, we will create a floating action button.small. The onPress will have a condition. If it's not the last index, then add 1 and change page. Otherwise, reset everything and put the index as 0. Then we will use the controller to animate into the next index. With an icon, the over elevation will be 0 and the elevation 0 also. And with all this, you have created the tab page selector widget. The tab bar widget. This is what you will be able to create with the tab bar widget. The first thing you need is a default tab controller. You will set the number of items inside your tab bar. The child will be a scaffold widget with the app bar. Inside we have the bottom, and we will use the tab bar widget. The tabs argument will require 3 different tabs. The first one is home, then setting, then person. After this, we will also create a title with the text Flutter map. In the body of the scaffold, we will use the tab bar view. The children will require 3 widgets. We will put a container orange accent home, and now you see we have an error because we need to have 3 widgets. The second one will be red accent with the icon setting, and then orange accent with the person icon. And now you have access to a tab bar widget inside Flutter. The page view widget. This is what you will be able to create. And to make this, we will start with the page view widget. Inside we will use the children and we will create 3 different containers. One which will be orange with the text 1, one that will be red accent with the text 2, and one that will be blue-gray with the text 3. And with only this code, you will have something like this in your Flutter app. The positioned widget. With this, you will be able to display 3 different images, one over the other, but with different position. Let's start with a center widget, then a stack widget. The children will be a positioned widget. Inside we have the left 20, the top 20, and the child will be an image network. This will position the image 20 from the left and 20 from the top. Next, we will create another positioned with the left 60 and the top 120. And you can see that the position is coming from this information. We will finally add another positioned with the left 100 and top 220. And this was how to use the positioned widget with your Flutter app. The ReorderableListView widget. At the end, this is what you will have on the screen. And to create this, we will start with a list of string called options. The string current option will be option 0. The column will have multiple widgets. The first one is the ReorderableListView. You can put a title, which will be option 1. The value will be the option with the index 0. The group value will be the current option. And the unchanged will return you the value that you can use to set state and set the current option to the new value. This is pretty much the same thing as the radio button, but already inside a list style. Now we will create another one with the title option 2, the value option with the index 0, the value options with the index 1, group value current option, and the unchanged will set state and set the current option. And like this, you have created 2 radio list style. The refresh indicator widget. In this example, I can refresh my list to have one more item inside. Let's create this right now with Flutter. First, you will start with a list of items. I will say item 1 and 2. And you will build the refresh indicator. This one will have the onRefresh, which will be an async function. The first thing we do is we will wait for 1 second, and then we will define the next item, which will be the items.length plus 1. We will add this item inside the list of items we have, and finally we will set state. The child of the refresh indicator will be a ListView.builder. And if you want to change the color of the refresh indicator, you can say color equal white and background color is equal to orange accent. This was the refresh indicator. The rotated box widget. On the screen we have the Flutter logo, which is rotated 1/4 of a turn. And you can do this by implementing the rotated box widget. The quarter turn argument will be 1. The child will be a Flutter logo. And this is what you will see on the screen. If you change the quarter turn for 2, you will see the Flutter logo will turn even more. This was the rotated box widget. The selectable text widget. This will most likely be useful inside your Flutter web app. But you can put this in any app. And to use this, we will start with a center widget. Inside, we will have the selectable text. The first thing you need to add is the text. Then you can create also a style if you want. There is an argument called the onSelectionChanged, and this will give you the information about the text selection you just did. Inside, you can put any logic that you want. And this was how to create a selectable text with Flutter. The slider widget. If you need something like this in your app, you can use the slider widget. To build this, we will start with a double current slider value at 20. The build will return the slider widget. The value will be the current slider value we just created. Max is the maximum value of the slider, and division is how many divisions you have in your slider. The label will be the current slider value that rounded to string. This is the value you can see on the screen when you move the slider. The unchanged function will give you a new value, which you can use to set state and set the new value of the current slider value to this value. And this was how to create a slider widget. The snack bar widget. When you press on this button, this will display a snack bar and it will disappear automatically after a while. And to create something like this, we need to create first an elevated button with the text show snack bar. The onPress function will trigger the scaffold messenger.ofContext.show snack bar. Inside we will put the snack bar widget. The contents will be Flutter map. This is just the information inside the snack bar. The action will be the snack bar action. The label will be undo and the onPress will be nothing for now. But keep in mind that you can trigger anything when you press the undo button. And just like this, you can trigger a snack bar widget in your Flutter app. The visibility widget. When I press on this button, this will show and hide the image at the bottom. We start with the isVisible boolean set as true. In the center and the column widget, we will create the children. The first one is a text button. When we press on this, this will set state and change the Boolean value for the invert. If it's true, it will be false. If it's false, it will be true. The child will be a text show and hide. After this, we create another widget, the image asset, then a sized box 30, and finally, we will use the visibility widget. The visible argument will use the variable Boolean we created, and the child will be an image asset. And now, when you press on the button, this will hide and show the image at the bottom. The wrap widget. This one is like a row, but each element over the screen will go right under. And to create this, we start with a padding, a center widget. The child will be a wrap. The spacing will be 10. This is the space between each widget. The run spacing will be 5. This is the additional space between each of them. And the children will be a list.generate. Inside, we will put 10 items, and each of them will be a chip widget. You can see that if I change the run spacing for 50 and I save, this will put a bigger space between each line of widget. And this was the wrap widget. The safe area widget. On the application right now, we have a text behind the status bar because we don't use the app bar. But the safe area widget will make sure that this never happens. And to use it, the only thing you need is to wrap the text widget with the safe area. And now you can see that the text is right under the status bar. This was the safe area widget. The layout builder widget. This one can be used to display different things inside your app depending on the size of the screen. You can see that when the screen is under 600, this is what I see. But if I move the screen on the side, I will have an image. So you can show different things on the app depending on the size of the screen. To create something like this, we will start with the layout builder. The builder argument will have the context and the constraints, and we will say if the constraints.max width is bigger than 600, then we will return a center widget with an image network. And otherwise, we will return a center widget with the text screen under 600. With this, you can see that when I move my screen to the other side, it's over 600, so we can display the image network. The orientation builder widget. You can see on the screen right now, this is a portrait mode. But as soon as I turn the screen, this is now landscape. I will show you how to do this with your Flutter app. First, we create a widget orientation builder. The builder would have the context and the orientation, and inside we will use a conditions. If the orientation is equal to orientation.portrait, then we will return a center widget with the text portrait. Otherwise, we will return a center widget with the text landscape. And just like that, you have used the orientation builder widget with your Flutter app. The overflow bar widget. This one is a mix between the row widget and the column widget. I will show you how it works. Inside the padding, we will create the overflow bar. The spacing will be all the spacing between each widget. The children will be an elevated button Flutter map, and we will create two other elevated buttons. But now what will happen if we add another button? In this case, it will become a column widget. So as soon as we don't have place on the screen anymore, this will transform into a column widget. The fitted box widget. Whatever the size of this orange container, the text will always fit inside perfectly. And this is because we use the fitted box widget. For this example, we will create a container with height 25 with 100 color orange accent, and the child will be a text widget. This is a pretty long text. We will also create a style of color black. And without the fitted box widget, this is what we will see on the screen. But if you wrap the text widget with the fitted box widget, you will see that the text will perfectly fit inside the container. And now let's try to remove the height and change the width for 300. This is what you will have on the screen. You can see that whatever the size of the container, the text will always be perfectly fit inside. And this is because we use the fitted box widget. The expansion tile widget. And this is what you will have at the end. To do something like this, we will first create a Boolean custom icon set as false. Inside a column widget, we will create the expansion tile. The title will be a text expansion tile. And you can also change the trailing icon if you want. For this example, we will say if the custom icon is true, then display this one, otherwise display the other icon. Later, we will find a way to set state the custom icon to a new value. Inside the children, you can add anything you want, but we will create a list style widget. The title will be a random text. On the expansion change, we will receive a new Boolean value. We will use this one to set state and set the custom icon to the value expanded that we just received. And with this, you can see that the icon is now different when we click on the expansion. But if you don't want to use a custom icon, you can remove the trailing and it will still work with the basic icon. The last thing I want to show you is you can use the control affinity.leading in order to change the location of this icon. And this was how to create an expansion tile with Flutter. Number 65, the Cupertino sliding segmented control. You will see that you have a selection of multiple items, and the segmented control will slide automatically with an animation. To create this, we will start with the int sliding equals 0. Inside the center widget, we will have the Cupertino sliding segmented control. The children will be 0, the text 0, 1 text 1, and 2 text 2. So the children is a map. Next, we need a group value, and this is the sliding int that we have created. Next, we have the unchanged value. This will return us a new int value, which we call the new value. We will set state and say that the sliding is equal to the new value. And just like this, you have access to a Cupertino sliding segmented control with your Flutter app. This one is pretty cool. If you want to discover more Flutter widget, you can click the playlist available on the screen. Thank you for watching, make sure to subscribe, and I see you in the next one. Bye.